Welcome back with another monthly update of the economy. As of this morning, the Bureau of Labor Statistics released the December 2023 unemployment data. And this data gives us some signals into what the Fed might do over the next year and how interest rates might change. If you are wondering what the future might look like, here's going to be a quick recap as of today, January 5th, 2024. In this video, we're going to cover 5 items. First, we're going to talk about inflation. Second, retail spending and GDP, jobs report that came out today, and then we're going to talk about the next Fed meeting, what date it is and what to expect, and then we will end with my areas of concern for the 2024 U.S. economy. So let's get started with inflation. Last month's inflation data shows that inflation is down to 3.1%. It is shocking that a year ago, inflation was a whopping 7.1%, and it didn't seem like we would be able to get inflation under control. The Fed's aggressive rate hikes have gotten us much closer to the 2% target that they like. I will admit that I was worried that the quick rate changes would quote unquote break the U.S. economy, but they haven't. The Fed has promised us a soft landing and it is delivering on that promise. We'll talk a little bit more about that later on. New inflation numbers will come out on January 11th, so keep an eye on that data, or if you don't want to follow it yourself, follow me on Instagram where I will discuss this data as it comes out. Let's talk about retail sales. Retail sales are up. Holiday retail sales are up 3.1% from last year. Consumers spent. They spent on clothing and eating at restaurants. They did avoid spending on electronics, mainly because they probably spent a lot on electronics during the past 2 years. So their spending between durable and non-durable goods has changed. That's something for us to keep an eye on. Spending on eating, let's talk about that. Spending on eating at restaurants was up 8% from a year ago. However, this increase in spending is not adjusted for inflation. If you want to talk about real GDP growth, it increased at an annualized rate of 4.9% in the third quarter of 2023. Remember, real means adjusted for inflation or adjusted for prices. So when the economists say real, we've already taken price changes into consideration. The U.S. economy continues to be supported by the consumer, and GDP numbers look really good. Let's talk about the labor market update. The job opening and labor turnover report, JOLTS, was released this week, and it showed that there are currently 8.8 million jobs open. The number of hires is 5.5 million. Both hires and openings are unchanged from the previous report. So, in summary, if you only looked at the JOLTS report, it would tell you that the labor market is stable and shows no concerns. As far as ADP and initial claims data, an estimated 164,000 new workers were hired in December. That's 34,000 higher than what was expected. Jobless claims came in at 202,000, but that's lower than what was expected. So both these data points indicate that the labor market remains healthy and strong going into 2024. As far as the data that came out today, payroll employment increased by 216,000 new jobs in December. For your reference, the expectation was only 170,000 new jobs. So this number is another indication that the labor market is booming. The unemployment rate was unchanged at 3.7. One thing that I noticed in today's report is hourly wages have increased by 4.1% over the past year. Now, the average hourly earnings for a private sector production non-supervisory employee is $29.42, which is a healthy number. Let's talk about the next Fed meeting. The next Fed meeting is scheduled for January 31st through February 1st. While I don't expect any changes to rates this meeting, if the economy were to continue on its current path, i.e. low unemployment numbers and decreasing inflation, the Federal Reserve might reduce or cut interest rates in the future. However, I don't believe that's going to be the case. I'm not 100% convinced about this because of the political tensions that are impacting transportation costs, specifically cargo pricing. Shipping rates have increased to $2,670 per 40-foot. If you don't follow cargo pricing, that might not mean much to you, but that's 25% increase in transportation cost and shipping costs in the past year. So this might serve as an inflationary pulse that will move through the supply chain. So we need to keep an eye on that. The Fed's done a great job, but geopolitical disruptions might make their job a bit harder. The other area of concern that I have is this continuous or continuing divide between the economic data that we see and how healthy it looks and the perception of the consumer on the state of the economy. These feelings or consumer sentiment might eventually lead to a decrease in spending. And if there's a decrease in spending, then that will impact GDP and our growth rate going into 2024. So I've previously discussed this in a different video. I will link to it up here. But the growing divide between actual economic data and what people are believing or saying is an area of concern. The takeaway here is the economy performed much better than expected in 2023. I will credit the Fed for their calculated efforts, also the consumer for continuing to spend and prop this economy. We have a strong and thriving labor market. And if you follow the stock market, the 24% gain in the S&P 500 in 2023 are all good signs to go into 2024. There are areas of concern, geopolitical disruptions, and consumer sentiment. It's going to be hard for 2024 to top 2023, but here's to hoping. Make sure to leave a comment, tell us how you feel about the economy. You can now actually follow us on YouTube and your favorite podcast platform. See you all next week.